coming up next, gentleman from the Inspire Foundation. So Inspire, if you guys don't know who Inspire is, actually Inspire is one of our largest clients. Inspire is a global business, restaurant business that owns Arby's, Sonic, Jimmy John's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Dunkin', and Baskin Robbins. And Rusty Taco. Let's not forget Rusty Taco. All right? And each one of those brands has their own foundation, and all of those foundations report up to this next gentleman, who's the executive director of the entire Inspire Foundation. So would you please help me welcome Stuart Brown. Buddy, thank you so much for being here, man. Stuart's one of my newer favorite people. Stuart and I have known each other for a couple of years, but I'm so impressed with your heart and who you are. I want to talk a little bit about this concept. The name of this session, we're going to change the slide, I believe. The name of this session is called From If to When. And that has just been emblazoned on my heart since you first told me this concept, because so many of the charities that your foundation works with are children charities, right? And so, explain the concept of if to when.
Sure. So a couple years ago, as you know, and as you guys will soon hear, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He runs a nonprofit out in Portland, Oregon. And their nonprofit solely focused on mentoring kids. And on this particular day, he had been out working with a group of kids, I think in a classroom setting. And he asked them a question that all of us have been asked. If you're a parent, you've asked this question. If you're a grandparent, aunt, or uncle, you've absolutely asked this question. And most of you probably know what the question is after I've introduced it this way. And the question was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? So it's a question that in most of our circles is filled with potential, optimism. Maybe you're just giving your high school senior a hard time because you know they've been asked that question a million times. But in general, it's a question that is supposed to be fun. I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old at home. And when we ask that question, the answer always depends on what they have just been doing. If they've been playing fantasy football on the weekend, watching football, they don't just want to play football, they want to own a football team.
They don't want to be a video game?
If they've been playing video games, and they want to play video, they want to be a designer. If they've been playing Legos, they want to, whatever it is. And so, as he's telling me the story, he says, Stuart, and I asked this question, and this one little boy looked at me and he said, well, if I grow up. And I was like, whoa, you got to stop. Because if the answer to that question begins with the word if, we have an issue. The end of the sentence doesn't matter.
Right.
And this wasn't, in some situations, that's a realistic response for a kid that's in a hospital, in a terminal wing, something like that. But this is a kid that I think was just growing up in a rough neighborhood. Right. And he looked at his future and said, my future begins with the word if. So as you might imagine, that hung with me for a few days. And again, I don't know if it was a couple days or maybe a few hours. And it hit me, that's what we do. We're turning if kids into when kids. Because as a foundation that supports multiple brands, we do different things. On the Arby's side, we support hunger relief. On the Jimmy John's side, workforce readiness. With Buffalo Wild Wings, we support access to youth sports. And with Sonic, it's about better educational experiences, right? And then there's a separate foundation that supports Dunkin' and Baskin, doing the same sorts of things. Yes, we're all in on kids. But I was trying to think through what puts an umbrella over all of that. And it's really removing uncertainty from the lives of kids so that they can become who they were created to be, right? And for us, you may think, uncertainty, that's not a big deal. We deal with uncertainty all the time.
Sure.
Your job is uncertain, right? But
I may not have one after this. I don't know.
But for folks like us, for whom childhood is, let's say, a few more years in the rearview mirror than others, you forget how important stability, predictability is for a child. Right. And so what we're trying to do is to make it so that instead of a child saying, if I get breakfast tomorrow, it's when I get breakfast. Instead of saying, if I find an adult who cares about me, it's when I meet with my mentor, when I meet with my big brother, when I meet with my big sister. It's when I get a great education, when I get not just a job, but a career. And take all those ifs and turn them into wins. And when we do that, we see kids thrive.
That's amazing. So can you tell me, tactically, what are some of the let's talk about if we can dissect down some of the different brands and their foundations. What does it look like, and how are you guys showing up for the different charities you partner with, and what's some of the response look like?
Yeah. So at a high level, so we as we work with each of our foundations, we've kind of picked specific issues that we want to tackle. Right? So although as Inspired Brands Foundation, we are one organization, we know that our brands are unique, they have their own personalities, they have their own kind of flavors, so to speak. And so for Arby's, we said, hey, it is childhood hunger, and then we're also working with the military community to make sure that the uncertainty of whether or not I can go to college is removed, and we're helping to provide scholarships through an organization like Folds of Honor. On the Buffalo Wild Wings side, as the largest sports bar brand in America, of course we're about sports. And so one of the things that's happened over the past few years, if any of you guys have kids, you know this, you have to have a lot of money for your kid to play sports, right? And there's a stat out there that's something like you are 3 times more likely for the child in a home where the annual household income is over $100,000, is 3 times more likely to play in team sports than when that income is something like 35 or 40. So it's just a huge barrier. And we know, like, sports don't make kids perfect, but there's so many opportunities that come from sports, so much confidence that comes.
Right. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, what are some of the actual benefits that you see correlating with sports that kids can participate?
So it's confidence, it's relationships, it's, you can talk about character, but some of it has to do with, hey, sometimes you're not the authority. There's a referee that's out there that's going to tell you what to do and when to do it, and you've got to play by the rules. You have to learn how to take coaching. You have to learn how to take instruction. Sometimes that instruction can be very encouraging. Sometimes it can be a little bit more harsh. You have to learn how to deal with different authoritative figures. For some of these students and some of these kids, it may be the only male influence they have in their life is their coach, right? For some of the girls that play, it's like, hey, I actually get an opportunity to do this thing that I've always wanted to do, but I wasn't allowed to do it. So it's opportunity to pursue what's important to you. So we see all those things happen. We work with Boys and Girls Club to put together an all-star sports program where now kids can come into a safe place and have a place to be where mom and dad are working, but also get to develop a skill, get to figure out what it means to work hard. I stole this from my brother. I've got a twin brother, and he always says to his kids, becoming good or being good is fun, but becoming good is hard. And so you get a chance to experience what it means to become good at something. Right.
So that actually, and we'll come back to the other charities in a second, but that actually kind of flies in the face of kind of our society where everybody kind of gets a trophy, right? And so I love the fact that actually, teaching people to be good at something is hard. It takes work, and you don't just get a trophy for showing up.
Exactly. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. All right, so that was Buffalo and Arby's.
So Sonic is, we have a program called Limeades for Learning. So every time you go to Sonic and you buy a drink, we're helping to support Donors Choose, where they work with teachers all over America to make sure they have the resources they need to kind of amp up the educational experience a little bit.
And millions of dollars already
Millions of dollars, yes.
Given to
I think last year about $3 million, $25 million overall over the last few years. So it's a really phenomenal program. And then Jimmy John's is working on workforce readiness, making sure that kids who are coming out of high school, who are coming out of college, are ready for the workforce that we're presenting to them now. And then
Duncan and Baskin are a little bit more health focused, right?
Duncan and Baskin, so they have their own foundation, and so phenomenal team that runs that organization. And so Duncan is focused on sick kids and hungry kids, and Baskin works with kids to help do some entrepreneurship kind of fun stuff with their kids. So we're all in on kids. We know that there is a lot of things for all of us to disagree about right now. Culturally, all sorts of us have things that we disagree about. I'm sure as I look at everyone here and everyone who's watching, I could come up with in probably about 2 minutes something we disagree on. But I also know that one thing we can all agree on is a better future for our kids.
Right.
100% of people are for that, and so that's something that we've been able to rally around and create a ton of momentum for.
So it's an interesting scenario. So when I was talking to Pat, right, we talk about philanthropic dollars and the way people can partner and the way people can give, but being part of such a large corporation like Inspire, each one of your brands has different ways that the customer partners. So talk a little bit about how that happens, and then are there other ways that people can be involved in the foundation?
Right. So all sorts of ways to get involved with us. In fact, at the end of this month, on March 27th, Arby's Foundation will start its annual Make a Difference campaign. And so anytime you go to Arby's for the next, pretty much through the month of April, you'll get a chance to donate $1 or round up, either way. And so this year we'll raise in the neighborhood of $6.5 to $7 million just from incredible guests and consumers who come in and say, hey, I get your vision. I see what you're a part of, and yes, I'd love to help out. We work to raise money through our supplier partners, through those organizations that work with Inspire. We raise several $1 million each year through those organizations. At Buffalo Wild Wings in the fall, we have what we call our Team Up for Kids campaign. And so similar to Arby's, you'll go in and they'll ask you if you want to help the kids in your community, and you can donate there. And then Dunkin' has several things throughout the year in their restaurants. And again, like we just said, Sonic, every day you go in, when you buy a drink, you're supporting.
So what I hear you saying is you could literally fill your calendar for the year by picking one of your restaurants, eating there every day, and that would be your way to
give. And if you want to do more, you can just go to our website and donate right there.
Right.
You don't have to wait. Right.
So give me a little bit of background on you and how your path to coming here, right? Everything we're talking about this week is this concept of your true west, right? You're finding your curiosity and your center of adventure and exploration. And so how did you find yourself as the executive director? What was your path that got you there?
It is a long and winding road. And so let me start off by giving a bit of a theory. There's a guy named Clayton Christensen. He wrote a book called How You Measure Your Life. Clayton is a former Harvard Business School professor. He wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, which in a lot of circles is considered the best business book of the 90s. So he has credentials. In his MBA class, at the end of every semester, he would teach a class. He would say, hey, I'm going to help you answer these 3 questions for your life. He'd say, I'm going to give you what you need to know that you will have you'll be happy with your career, what you'll need to know on how to have happy relationships. He said, and then the third one is how can you stay out of jail, which feels a little bit weird, right? But he said he went to school with a guy named Jeff Skilling, who was one of the founders of Enron. And he said, it's really not necessarily how do you stay out of jail, but how do you live a life of integrity? Right. And so in this book, he took that curriculum, he took that lecture, turned it into a book. And one of the things he talks about in this book, he says, for most of us who are entrepreneurs, he says there's really a couple things that happen. He says one thing, and I promise I'm getting to the point here. He says one thing that happens is that everyone thinks that the startups that make it, they're the ones that were just smarter than everybody else. So that's not really true. For the most part, the startups that make it are the ones that had more money to go through all the iterations to get to the right strategy. Right. And he said for most of us, our careers are the same way. Right? And he said, so for most of us, we have emergent careers. Right. For some of us, we have deliberate career choices, right? And so all of us went to high school with someone that when they were, ninth grade said, I want to be a vet, or I want to run a hedge fund, or I want to start a creative studio, right? Right. So there are a few of those who, from the age 16 on, ended up doing that. The vast majority of us said, I have no idea what I want to do. And so he said, if you are in that emergent category, just go bump into as many things as you can. And eventually you'll bump into the right one, and then you can get deliberate. So it's a really long-winded way to say I have very much had that emergent approach. And so what has been consistent throughout my career is I like to solve problems and I like to give back. And so after doing some consulting work, after working at Target as a buyer, I was able to be a part of a startup in West Africa where we were building a cashew factory of all things, cashew processing factory.
I assume that was a purpose-driven business. It brought you to West Africa?
Very much, very much. It was that's an industry that has a lot of some darker sides to it, and we were able to start that up and make sure that there is healthcare and make sure that there is childcare, and most importantly, make sure that it is an organization that's going to last so that people no longer have to worry about whether or not they're going to have food, and now they can start thinking about bigger things, right? So anyway, all that to say, how did I get here? I bumped into it. I'd been in a lot of purpose-driven work and got a call and said, man, that sounds really interesting. And in my mind, I was going to move on to something else within about 12 to 18 months, but man, I got into it and just loved it. And just found myself very much emergent in the right place at the right time.
Well, it's funny, and I know you made the comment about knowing starting a creative studio when you were 16.
Yeah.
That is clearly not my story. A band, DJ, and I kind of like fell up all the way to where we are today, right? So just stumbling
And
along.
I think it's one of the things when we work with students all the time is we say, hey, look, it's okay if you don't know what you want to be, right? But go try things, try them on, bump into them, and at some point, whether you're 25, 35, or 45, you're going to bump into something that grabs your heart, and you're going to run with it. Right. And that's don't be afraid to do that.
So I was to ask you this question.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the questions.
No problem. I get it.
You're dealing with, all these children's causes.
Yeah.
There's no way possible that we're ever going to fix all of it. So what is that like, just knowing that the problems can never really all be solved?
Yeah.
But is it like eating an elephant, right? Just a little bit at a time. What is it that keeps you going and just kind of going? The more we are successful, the more we find out other places that need help.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
There's a couple different ways I look at it. One is there's an old preacher story about a little girl on a beach, and there's a bazillion starfish, right? We've all heard that. Throws them back. Just going down the beach one by one, throwing all these starfish back in the ocean. And there's an older gentleman filled with wisdom who says, you will never save all of them. She picks one up, throws it back, says, save that one. Save that one, right? So there's a story that says, hey, we can only do what we can do,
right?
But we're going to do all that we can do, right? And so for us, it is, taking the resources we have, doing the best we can to change as many lives as we can change. And we know that at the end of every year, it's like, hey, look at everything we did, but there's still more.
Right.
But there's still more we could do. And it's motivating to know there's still more.
Right.
But it's also gratifying to know that even if all we did was change one life, we changed that one life.
Right.
And there's something powerful in that.
So can you share maybe a couple of stories of some success stories?
So many. The one that is most pertinent and was just the most powerful one I've heard this year. And I've got to say that a lot of the stories that happen because of our foundation, we don't actually hear the names. We don't actually, get to walk with the individuals through it because we're helping the organizations who are helping the kids, right? But if you'll remember last year, it's probably about this time, there was a school shooting in a little town in Texas called Uvalde, Texas. Mm-hmm. And there was a gentleman on the Buffalo Wild Wings team who called up the funeral home over there and just said, hey, what can I do to help? Said, I work with Buffalo Wild Wings. I can bring some food. Like, that's not going to solve anything, but I can bring some food. And they said, yeah, that'd be great. He said, don't know. I'm not trying to, I mean, just how many? We're talking about 50, 100, 400. They said, well, probably about 400 people. I said, great. So he brought the meals over, fed a ton of people, built relationships. And now Buffalo Wild Wings has a long-standing relationship with Boys and Girls Club. And as this gentleman, Brian, got to know the community of Uvalde a little bit, he realized there's no Boys and Girls Club there. And so he started telling everyone he knew, we're going to put a Boys and Girls Club here. And they're like, well, have you talked to Boys and Girls Club America? No, but we're going to put one here. And so then he started talking to them. And then he started going around. And by the way, he lives at least an hour and a half from Uvalde. So then he started, as he got this image and this vision in his mind, he would meet someone. He goes, hey, you're going to be the director for the Boys and Girls Club in Uvalde, Texas. She's like, well, is there a club there? He goes, no. Do you work for Boys and Girls Club? I don't. But you're going to be the director there, right? So this is just one of those guys that just had a vision and does not say no. And he's also by far the biggest fundraiser we have on the Buffalo Wild Wings brand. And so last year, his restaurants raised, and he has his restaurants raised about $300,000 of the $2 million that Buffalo Wild Wings raised, and which is an absurd amount of money for just a small number of restaurants. And so he brought in the foundation. We brought in the relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, and earlier this year they had the soft launch for the Boys and Girls Club in Uvalde, Texas.
That's
so
incredible.
A community that is just hurting like crazy, and Boys and Girls Club was phenomenal. They they got this thing set up so there's enough funding for years, and so it is just really the power of, hey, what can I do to help? Like that question is so powerful. And sometimes we're afraid to ask it because we're afraid of what the answer is.
Right.
We're afraid it's going to come across the wrong way. Like, how could I possibly help this community that just lost all these kids?
Right.
So it started with some meals and built some relationships, and then you're off
That's
and
incredible.
running. So it's just a really incredible.
Talk about finding your true West, right? Just like exploration and curiosity, and then, right?
And then he spent all of October during the Team Up for Kids campaign raising money in his restaurants for a community that is not really his, so to speak, and then evangelizing this mission across the entire Buffalo Wild Wings system. So the amount of money that came in for that small community, because someone said, hey, what can I do to help? And all of a sudden now you have an entire brand that says, hey, we're in on this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Any other stories? Give me one more.
Man.
Give me one more. Then I want to talk to you a little personally about you.
Yeah.
About you.
You know, I think that for us, the stories that we land on are somewhat universal. Like, we know that every day, because we exist, kids are getting breakfast that would not have gotten breakfast before. We know that every day we exist, there are kids who are meeting an adult who says, hey, I care about you, I believe in you. We know that there are kids who are getting a chance to play soccer, basketball, football, which again doesn't sound like a big deal, but the story I always think about, and this is not an official story, but the story I think about is the little 8-year-old girl who just loves to play soccer, but her parents can't afford it because travel sports are expensive, right? And she is on YouTube watching videos. She's out in her backyard practicing, not just with the right foot, but with the left foot, right? She's doing all of it. Like, she is in. She goes up and watches her friends play. And she keeps saying, maybe one day I'll be able to do that, right? And then because we exist, because Boys and Girls Club exists, because we have this all-star sports program, she gets access to that. And now she gets to play soccer as often as she wants, gets the jersey, goes out, and I imagine our general managers, or imagine our VPs who are helping raise this money. And they go out and they see that field. They see that little girl go down, and she scores 6 goals. And they see her just beaming because she's doing what she was created to do.
That's life.
Then they look across and they see her mom. They see the joy that she has in seeing her daughter do what she was created to do.
Right.
And so while I can't say that that's the exact story that's happened, it happens. It happens hundreds of thousands of times all over this country because we exist.
And you hit that one kid, then it becomes infectious to their siblings, and it just
And
see
it goes
the power
on
of possibility,
and on.
right?
Yeah, of course. And it's the, there's we talk about from if to win, but there's also this amazing question of what if,
Right.
right? What if we did this? What if we accomplished that? So this word if is so powerful in so many ways.
Right.
In some ways,
How you use it, right?
right. In some ways, we want to eliminate it,
Right.
because it means uncertainty. But when you put the word what in front of it, it's also all of a sudden it's about possibility.
Right.
What if we created this sports thing? What if we were able to put together an incredible bit of storytelling that would tell our story really well?
Right.
And we called it, So there's so many things.
Yeah. I sat on a panel yesterday about creative problem solving, and the final question I was asked was, if I give somebody the gift of True West, of curiosity, of creativity, what would that gift be? And I said, what if?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's it. Right?
Yeah, and what
in
if,
all situations, what if?
I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and I heard our CEO was up there, and the question that was posed to him was, hey, what's the best advice you've ever been given? What's the best business advice you've ever been getting? And as I listened to that, and he gave a great answer, but what occurred to me was, what if, for all of us who are sitting here paying attention to this, what if the person that we've been mentoring, what if the kid that we've been investing in, what if down the road, 30 years from now, they're sitting on stage and someone asks them that question? And their answer is going to be, hey, David, why don't you stand up? Because you're going to be in the audience, right? Because you've been investing in this person forever.
Right.
And we say, hey, do you remember that time that we were having lunch? And of course, it's going to be at Arby's, right?
Right.
And you're going to say, yeah. You're going to say, no. You're thinking, no, I have no idea.
Right.
But they remember. They're going to say, well, it's when David said that, right? And so for all of us, when we take a moment to invest in the next generation, we never know what hangs in the balance. And what I know is that for all of us, there's someone we've invested in, and whether it's because they got asked that question in an interview, whether they are the CEO that's now being asked that question, someone's going to repeat the advice we gave them, and their life is going to change, and then they're going to share that advice, and then hundreds, maybe thousands of other lives are going to change. Right. And so it's all that to say we don't know what hangs in the balance, so why not give back? Why not be all in for someone else's life, even though it means that we have to be all out on something else we'd maybe rather be doing,
right.
But we're going to be all in, and we'll see that ripple effect and see those lives that change.
So let me just finish up with this. So your kids,
yeah.
how how is what you do every day affecting your kids? Are you seeing that?
There's a couple ways. I think one of the most fun ways for me is that I'm a big believer that the most important thing in our world is relationships. Like, that's how things get done. That's how you come up and say, hey, can we help you with this? We have a relationship, right? And you say, hey, can you come into this thing? I'm like, sure, I'll do anything, right? So if you ask my 10-year-old or my 8-year-old and say, hey, what's your most valuable possession? My 10-year-old will roll his eyes, but he'll go, relationships, friendships, right? And so that's super important, right? I think the other way it comes in is that every day when I come home, my 8-year-old says, hey, Dad, did you raise any money today? I'm like, on the good days, I'm like, yeah, we brought in lots of money. Or other days, like, you know what? No, we didn't bring any money today. But what I know happened today, because we did bring in money yesterday and the day before, is kids are eating, kids are getting educated, kids are having a better future than they would otherwise. And then we get to take them to volunteer events. We get to let them say, hey, so in the month of April, Inspire Brands has what we call Good Citizens Month. And we're doing hundreds of volunteer events all over the country. And we could take my kids to that and expose them to, hey, again, becoming good is hard. Becoming good as a society is hard. As a culture is hard, right? But it's good, and it's worth it. And these are the type of things that we do to become good.
Wow. I so appreciate you taking the time, driving all the way in from Atlanta this morning just to be with us. Can we have a nice round of applause for Stuart Brown?
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
Oh,
We're just going to take a quick break, and we will be right back after this message with the panel, and we're going to talk about the bridge from Selma. Stick around when the Go West experience continues.